Welcome back. Well, that was a pretty interesting first segment there with Governor Gary Johnson. Eliminate the IRS right off the bat. Come on. Who can get behind that? Show of hands. That's what I thought. Yeah, everybody. Okay, well, with no further ado, let's get on with the second part of the interview with Governor Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate for President of the United States.
We're back here with Governor Gary Johnson. Governor, how has this campaign been going so far?
Well, regardless of how it turns out, there's a lot of momentum right now. The momentum really is double. It's kind of logarithmic. It's kind of doubling every 4 or 5 days right now, and I base that on faxes, phone calls, emails, contributions. So a lot of excitement. And regardless, it's just been a victory from day one, being the candidate out there speaking the truth, something that really needs to be said in this campaign, something that's not being said right now by anybody.
Governor, I read something today that if you do not win this election, you're going to be running again in 2016.
Well, there's a lot of momentum, and the momentum is just straight line right now. And as long as there's momentum, I would love to stay involved in this. And of course, I also need to make an assessment if I'm still relevant, which I hope is the case. But yeah, I'm going to stay involved as long as there continues to be this kind of momentum and as long as I'm relevant, which hopefully would be through 2016.
Well, it's definitely that you're definitely relevant, at least in my eyes. And what I'd like to see is you continue to be a voice for liberty after the election and, actively promoting liberty,
That's my intention. My intention is to do just that. It's too important to go unsaid. And I'll just go back to the primary running as a Republican. I thought it was going to really be hard for the media, the Republican Party, to marginalize two people on stage talking about the same thing, myself and Ron Paul. I did not find myself marginalized. I found myself unfairly excluded. What I thought I witnessed was Ron Paul continuing to be marginalized, and this is just way too important a message. It has way too much momentum. There's way too much truth in everything that's being said. It's the genuine solutions that go along to the issues that we face. Let's not bomb Iran. Let's get out of Afghanistan and bring the troops home tomorrow. Let's recognize marriage equality as a constitutionally guaranteed right. Let's end the drug wars. Let's legalize marijuana now. Let's repeal the Patriot Act. I would have never signed the National Defense Authorization Act. Let's balance the federal budget now. Let's abolish income tax, corporate tax, eliminate the IRS, replace all that with one federal consumption tax, and strong money, strong U.S. dollar, not weak U.S. dollar. That's the Federal Reserve. Look, if we don't fix this, if we only have ourselves to blame, and yet we really have no choices, and media continues to marginalize at best what I have to say. Well, what I have to say, I realize, is just representative of a whole lot of people in this country that do recognize the problems that we face, which I think are actually the majority of Americans. But given that they don't have any voice whatsoever, given that this is a manipulated process, I'd like to hang in. I'd like to hang in and get the best revenge that I possibly can, which would be success.
That is always the best revenge. And, it appears like, for example, what was your opinion of the convention and how they treated Dr. Paul?
Well, it was just an extension of everything that has gone on to this point. If I would have been the Republican nominee, I would have welcomed with open arms the candidate who took second place in the entire process, given him a speaking slot regardless of what he had to say. And I would have embraced those things that, in this case, if it would have been Ron Paul, I would have been able to embrace everything it is that he had to say. But in Romney's case, he should have really reached out and tried to bridge that gap. But he continued to marginalize Ron Paul and his followers. And I hope it comes back to bite him in a really big way.
I'm sure that it will. Now, Governor, out here in Nevada, obviously you were governor of New Mexico. You know, on the west coast of this country, a lot of the land is government land, BLM land. Any thoughts on what would you do with that land as president?
Yeah, well, actually, we have the same grid in New Mexico as exists in Nevada. We have the same percentage of public-private ownership in New Mexico as exists in Nevada. I would love to sell that land off, sell it off, put it on the property tax rolls. Right now, people east of the Mississippi are making rules regarding public lands, and they have no idea what public lands are in the West. They have no idea what Bureau of Land Management lands, when they start talking about BLM lands, what's being talked about.
Yeah. Well, what's it, like 3% everywhere else? In Nevada, it's 90%.
Well, it's BLM lands are laid out in a checkerboard. You've got an absolute geometric checkerboard. Red squares, red squares, black squares. Red squares are privately owned, black squares are publicly owned. So whenever anybody hears about a ranch in the West where it's a 10,000 acre ranch, it's always followed by 5,000 of it is public and 5,000 of it is private. Well, that's the checkerboard.
Wonderful. Now, you flew in today, and we were talking before, and I asked you if you had any problems with the TSA. What would you do about the TSA?
Well, I would like to abolish the TSA. I would like to leave airport security to the airlines, to the airports, municipalities, cities. I noticed where a concert venue security organization was booted because it was so intrusive to concert goers. Look, if TSA were responsive to the public, they would be less intrusive. They'd be as safe. If Congress doesn't abolish the TSA, I guarantee you that that because I would be in charge of TSA, because I would appoint the head of the TSA, that TSA from the very get-go of my presidency would be less intrusive and as safe, and people would notice it.
You know, the Fourth Amendment, illegal search and seizure, and they're groping everybody. It's kind of, I've heard horror stories from friends of mine. I see them every day on the internet. And with that in mind, it's time to go to another commercial, but we'll be right back with Governor Gary Johnson.